Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're reading from Canto 4 at the moment, chapter 7, Daksha's sacrifice. We'll begin this chapter now. Daksha completes his sacrifice and Vishnu appears in person. Verses 1 to 3, Shiva smiled. Brahma had spoken well. There was no need to harbor any ill feeling. He said, "My dear father, I am not upset by the offenses of the gods and priests. I consider them exactly like immature children. I punished them merely to teach them a lesson. I shall certainly restore Daksha's life, but as you know, his head has been burned to ashes. I shall therefore give him a goat's head. Regarding Bhaga, since he looked mockingly at me, he shall not regain his eyes. Out of deference to you, I will let him see his share of the sacrifice through Mitra's eyes." Verse 4, since Pusha derisively showed his teeth, he shall not regain them. Rather, he may chew his food with the help of his disciples' teeth. If he is gone, he will have to eat soft foods like bread made of chickpea flour. As for the gods who did not actively side with Daksha, they were injured because they enjoyed their share of sacrifice without offering me mine. Now they have agreed to give me my share. They will fully recover from their injuries. Verse 5, as for the priests who sided with Daksha by raising their arms and shouting, they had their arms broken, they will not be healed. Instead, they can use the Ashwini Kumar's arms for their works. Those who had their hands severed may similarly use Pusha's hands. Since Bhrigu was Daksha's chief advisor, his moustache will be replaced by that of a goat. Verse 6, everyone present approved of Shiva's decision. Brahma said, "Dear Shiva, it is not without reason that you are known as the best of those who bestow benedictions." Verse 7, Brahma turned to Bhrigu, "You are the chief priest of the sacrifice. Kindly say what must now be done." Bhrigu stepped forward with folded palms. "Lord Shiva, please come with us to the sacrificial arena and take your seat. The sacrifice cannot continue without you." In great pomp, Brahma and Shiva, along with the gods and priests, returned to the sacrificial arena. Verses 8 to 10, once there Shiva directed its restoration. Finally, he ordered the head of the sacrificed goat to be joined to Daksha's body. Daksha opened his eyes as if he was awakening from sleep and saw Shiva standing before him. He remembered the power of Shiva's followers and that he had been killed. He touched his body. How was he alive? Was it a dream? Shiva must have restored him to life. Tears pricked Daksha's eyes. Shiva was truly the greatest of the gods. He looked at him with a newfound respect, feeling his heart becoming pure, cleansed of all envy. Verses 11 and 12. He prayed, "Lord Shiva, you are the worshipful Lord of Sati." As soon as he uttered Sati's name, he faltered. Sati, due to his callousness, she was dead. He wept and his voice became choked. Gradually his sobs abated. Gazing at Shiva, his heart swelled with love and he continued to pray. Verse 13, although I criticized you, you remained kindly disposed toward me. Accepting me as your relative, you did not withdraw from me. Instead, you punished me to bring me to my senses. This is your great favor. Neither you nor Lord Vishnu ever neglect even useless, unqualified Brahmins. Since I was engaged in sacrifice, you have saved me. Verse 14, O greatly powerful Shiva, you were created from Brahma's mouth to protect Brahmins engaged in cultivating knowledge, austerity, vows, and self-realization. Just as a cowherd boy uses a stick to protect his cows, you ensure we Brahmins properly follow the regulative principles of religion. Verse 15, I did not appreciate your full glories, and I had the audacity to insult you in the assembly of gods and sages. I know you did not take this offense seriously, but you knew I was destined for hell due to my offenses. You have punished me simply to save me from such a fate. Please be satisfied by your own mercy. I am unable to adequately glorify you. Verse 16, Shiva raised his right hand. Arise, Daksha, I forgive you. Daksha stood up shakily, saying, Brahma, he bowed his head. Father, pray, command me. Brahma smiled at his contrite son. You may now complete your sacrifice. Daksha, let Bhrigu and other learned priests assist you as before. Verse 17, Daksha, Bhrigu, and some of the other chief priests surveyed the devastated sacrificial arena. Everything had been broken and contaminated with the urine and blood. They arranged for hundreds of Brahmins to thoroughly cleanse the entire area with the Ganges water. As they cleansed, they continuously chanted Vishnu's names, considering that to be the best means of purification. When everything was clean, they lit a sacrificial fire and offered oblations of rice flour, cakes steeped in ghee. Verses 18 to 20, as Daksha poured ladles of ghee into the life airs our senses and our souls and bless us with enlightenment. The priests intoned the sacred syllable Om, and Vishnu at once appeared there in his original form of Narayan. He was seated on Garud, and his bodily effulgence illuminated all directions. Even Brahma and Shiva's luster was diminished in his presence. His complexion was blackish and his garments were golden yellow. His helmet was as dazzling as the sun. His hair was the color of black bees and his face was framed with earrings. In his 8 hands he had conch shell, wheel, club, lotus, arrow, bow, shield and sword. His arms were decorated with golden ornaments such as bangles and bracelets. His whole body resembled a blossoming tree. Verses 21 and 23 now. The entire assembly stood unmoving, transfixed by his beauty. The goddess of fortune and a lotus garland decorated his chest. His smile was captivating on either side. He was fanned by white yak-tail whisks resembling swans, and the white canopy covering him resembled the moon. Everyone present, including Brahma and Shiva, fell prostrate before him, overwhelmed by feelings of awe and veneration. They touched their folded palms to their heads and prepared to offer prayers. Verse 24, Brahma said, My Lord, your unlimited glories are beyond comprehension. Only by your grace we can see you and offer you our prayers, each according to his capacity. Shiva spoke next, followed by each of the gods. Verse 25, when Vishnu had accepted the sacrificial offerings, Daksha trembled in ecstasy. He gazed at the Lord with tear-filled eyes. Vishnu was the master of all sacrifice and the teacher of all Prajapatis, and he was served by exalted personalities in the spiritual world such as Nanda and Sunanda. Verse 26, with folded palms, Daksha said, My dear Lord, no one can understand you with their material intelligence, for you are completely spiritual. You know no fear and you completely control the material energy. Narayan said, If I am fully spiritual, how am I here with you in the material universe? Daksha saw a smile playing at the corner of Narayan's mouth. The Lord was testing him. He said, You appear in the material universe in your own spiritual form, which is free of material contamination. Unlike us, you are self-sufficient and independent. So this is what differentiates us from the Almighty. The Almighty is self-sufficient and independent, whereas we are completely opposite. The priests who had performed the sacrifice stared at Daksha. How does he know anything about Vishnu? Vishnu turned to their group. Would you like to speak? Turning red, they pushed forward the chief among them. He stood silently for some moments. What could he say to glorify the all-powerful Vishnu? The Lord seemed to approve of Daksha's prayers. Perhaps he should say something similar. Verse 27, the priest said, Lord, you are transcendental to material contamination. He stopped and stared at his fellow priests, who all stared back blankly. Despite their great learning in the Vedas, none of them could think of anything else to say. After a few moments of shifting from foot to foot, the flustered priest said, "As you know, Lord, we were cursed by Nandishvara to become attached to the fruitive activities. We have therefore lost our transcendental knowledge and know nothing about you. We are simply absorbed in thoughts of material gain, sense gratification, and freedom from suffering. These are the only reasons we execute Vedic sacrifice." Vishnu said in gentle tone, "You know nothing about me." The priest held his chin and looked from one companion to another. The other priests conferred, and finally one of them whispered into his ear. Clearing his throat, the spokesman repeated what he had been told. "My lord, you have made arrangements to distribute the shares of sacrifice to the gods." Others in the assembly groaned. Vishnu turned to them and invited them to speak. A Brahmin stepped forward and spoke on their behalf. Verse 28. "Lord, we are dismayed to hear the priest's lack of knowledge about you. You are the only shelter for anyone in troublesome material existence. Material life is like a constantly revolving wheel. Birth and death follow each other without respite. On that wheel there are ditches of happiness and distress into which we all fall. Material life is exactly like being lost in a dangerous forest fire where there is every chance of being bitten by a snake. Similarly, the snake of time suddenly inflicts sufferings on us without warning. As there are many dangerous animals in the forest, similarly there are many miseries in material life. As there is always danger of a forest fire in material life, we are always at risk of being overwhelmed by the fire of lamentation." "Tell me, how do souls enter this dangerous forest?" asked Vishnu. "Lord, our troubles start when, overwhelmed by lust for sense gratification, we forget you. Only you can give us relief, but you do not intervene until we turn to you." So this is our position. Looking back at the shame-faced priest, the speaker said, "Conditioned souls desiring worldly enjoyment identify with the material body and feel overburdened with their many so-called duties. No one knows when such foolish persons will surrender to you." So this is what is happening. Everyone is shirking away from surrendering to Lord, thinking that their worldly duties are more important, and the life keeps going by. And Lord is not going to intervene until we are lost in the sense gratification and other materialistic pursuits. We have to serve the Lord. Vishnu raised a hand in blessing. He then turned to Shiva and beckoned him to come forward. Gazing at Vishnu's smiled countenance, Shiva bowed his head. As a Lord's faithful follower, he should not have given way to the anger and destroyed the sacrifice. Verse 29, Shiva said, "My Lord, your lotus feet are the only objects of my meditation. Indeed, all liberated souls worship your feet, as you alone can fulfill all desires. Now my mind is again firmly fixed on you. I am no longer disturbed by the accusations of my critics who claim my behavior is impure. Just as you always show compassion, I too forgive them." Vishnu looked affectionately at Shiva. So I think it was very important discussion so far, and we will continue with this chapter, Daksha's sacrifice, next time. Thank you for joining. Hare Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.